If you put the word disappointed into Spotify, the top result, no surprise, is a song by Morrissey from Bone a Drag, in which Morrissey plagiarises himself, or at least the Smiths, by ripping off the tune of How Soon Is Now with some predictably dirge-like lyrics. It's a somewhat disappointing song, I would say, within the Mozza oeuvre, which is why I usually keep on scrolling until I find the ditty that I'm actually looking for, also called Disappointed by that magnificent, should have been bigger than U2 in their time, Irish band, The Frames. And this is one of their curled in on itself classics, a song that Bozo, Bono et al. Could never have written in a million years, in which singer-songwriter Glen Hansard, probably an Enneagram 4 I would say, whimpers out the key line in the chorus, "I'm not sad, I'm just disappointed." I have a client, a gay man, roughly my age, who is always, much like myself I guess, in a kind of continual disappointed social freefall. I mean, okay, he's got one or two parasocial mates and acquaintances, as do I, but no significant other, either romantically or friends-wise. Dude doesn't even have a dog, and so naturally in session is always banging on about how brutally disappointed he is with life and the way that his particular cookie has crumbled. And we've been having this conversation for years now, long before COVID, despite all my and others' best efforts to, therapize him and his Morrissey-like grievances. If I wasn't getting paid to be in self for 60 longish minutes, calm, curious, compassionate, clear, connected, creative, congenial, and all the rest of it, I would probably end up barking in his direction on a weekly basis something like, "Okay, I get it, you're disappointed, you are disappointed with everyone and everything, but mainly you are disappointed with that old sad sack of yourself, that part of you who once upon a time at least made a sort of half-hearted effort to take you off to social and networking events, gay bars and meetups, on the vague off chance that some other disappointed individual might find you or me non-disappointing enough to want to have a meaningful friendship or sexual encounter with us." And what can I say? Me too, my friend. And that, unfortunately, is our problem. But don't worry, because that is everyone's problem, you will no doubt find, if you ever end up doing what I have ended up doing for a living. Disappointment, as that seeker many moons ago sitting under a fig tree realized, is not just an occasional inconvenience, my dear beloved broken record of a client. It is unfortunately the very texture of being conscious. Siddhartha used the word dukkha for this condition, which is often translated as suffering. But suffering, I think, is far too noble and tragic a term for what that spiritual seeker meant. Suffering has got a kind of grandeur to it, a kind of cinematic resonance. It sounds like something you could write a requiem for. But the actual experience of dukkha is much more mundane and dull-edged and frankly disappointing. It's all knit up, as is often the case, in the actual word itself. Disappointment comes from the old French désappointer, which means to be removed from office, to be unappointed, which is to say, to be quietly informed by life in this case, that the role you imagine for yourself as a chosen someone, a beloved someone, or just, someone not having to do whatever you're doing on a daily basis, well, that's not yours to have, sorry. Every moment of lived existence, right, is a kind of a disappointment at this micro-ontological level, a Goldilocks affair, we might say. The tea isn't hot enough, or it's too hot, or it didn't taste as good as it did yesterday. The WhatsApp message is colder or shorter than you'd hope for. The walk doesn't clear your head. The apology doesn't really land. The yoga doesn't fix your longing. You go to sleep with the same vague lack that you woke up with, etc., etc. No tragedy, no suffering per se, nothing technically wrong with this state of affairs, just the basic ambient subtraction of essential meaning, coherence, relief, and ease. The Pali word, dukkha, as you may know, originally referred to the misalignment between the axle and the hub of the wheel. So the literal image conjured up by the word dukkha, disappointment, for a speaker of Pali is that of a cart whose wheel doesn't quite fit. So with every rotation, you get a grind, you get a squeak, you get some low-level juddering friction. Not enough to stop the journey, but just enough to make every inch of it a minor fucking ordeal. So picture it. You're on a long trip, no idea where it ends, and the whole thing slightly off-center. Always. Every turn of the wheel, little ouchy, little wincy, a little Christ on a stick, not this again. That's the vibe. That's disappointment. That's what the guy under the fig tree bequeathed to human consciousness a couple of thousand years ago. You know, not that we're being tortured, no. Just that even when things are rolling along, they're never really rolling along in the way that we had hoped for. It's not that we're sad or despairing or hopeless or traumatized or anxious or, you know, any of the usual adjectives wheeled out to cover for the existential glitch at the heart of our everyday human experience. Siddhartha had it sussed, I would say, at an existential level. What is man or woman? Well, for the most part, this sort of tortured human animal on a hedonic treadmill, tortured by our very own minds that serve us exquisitely when it comes to, say, I don't know, figuring out how to optimize an irrigation system or design a facial recognition drone capable of striking a moving target such as a child chasing a ball in a refugee corridor, but not so much when it comes to living out our lives in peace and harmony. Are you living out your life in peace and harmony on a moment-by-moment basis? I'm not. And I would suspect you of being a little bit dead inside, or maybe an Enneagram 9, if you said otherwise. Neurobiologically speaking, disappointment is what happens when a predicted reward fails to materialize. So you reach for your phone, right? Not because you want anything in particular, but because, I don't know, maybe something will spark, something will appoint itself, but it doesn't. You sharpen a pencil and immediately the lead snaps. The brain logs this as a mismatch between what was expected and what occurred, and therefore an error, something wrong, right? The dopamine doesn't show up, the reward system dips, nothing catastrophic, but enough to register as an absence, enough to remind us, no, sorry, not this, not now, not quite, and most likely not ever. We're not being punished for being human, although it might sometimes feel that way. We're just, you know, running our animal bodies on prediction systems that were built for foraging patterns and tribal affairs rather than, I don't know, trying to decode the existential silence of someone who just viewed your Instagram story and still hasn't texted back. Recently, I have been playing an earnest game with disappointment, which requires a clicker like this one. I bought mine from a company on Amazon who, for reasons known only to the algorithmic goblins of late capitalism, have decided to brand these clickers as Starming color counters. A disappointing and frankly borderline infuriating brand name, if there ever was one. Starming! Sounds a bit like a typo having a stroke, right? And even more disappointing, though admittedly worth a bleak little chuckle, is the tagline for these future landfill plastic items printed on every box, which is, "Say goodbye to boring counting." As if, you know, what we'd be missing from the process of counting from 1 to 100 is maybe a surprise plot twist around 37, some catharsis at 85, and a bittersweet fade out towards the end. Well, whoopee-doo. So now I can count all my disappointments with a green or an orange clicker instead of the boring silver or black ones. How exciting is that? Starming. But anyway, here's the game. Okay, so you sit down or you walk along with one of these cheap little clickers looped around your index finger, and every time you feel a flicker of disappointment, no matter how minor, you click. Sock chafing against your heel. There we go. The wind that was a moment ago refreshing but is now annoying. An ant crawling over your arm. I'd also suggest at this point incorporating the second truth of disappointment, according to Siddhartha, into this earnest game, which is to say, noticing that the disappointment has only arisen because an appointment, an expectation, a projection, a secret hope has quietly slipped into our consciousness-making algorithm and is now pissing all over the furniture, right? So let's remind ourselves of those. Okay, truth one. Moment by moment, life is objectively fine. In fact, hunky fucking dory, friends. But also, subjectively, very, 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 if you're a 4, add a fourth very, 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 very disappointing. Truth 2. Disappointment arises from our mind's annoying habit of appointment, expectation, projection, all those secret and unfulfilled hopes and desires that this fucking thing appoints for us as if they were ours to be had, which they're not. They're not. Truth 3. Disappointment becomes even more of a drag when we resist this unappointment, this disappointment, and go, wah, I'm uncomfortable, I'm bored, I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm not getting what I thought I was meant to be getting from this life, this moment, you, whatever, right? You can tell that the Buddha was an Enneagram 5, I would say. Stoic to the max. No tissues, no tenderness for your wahs. Hardcore Buddhist renunciate logic and language. Dharma for dead-eyed biohackers. But also very, 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 very disappointing to be on the receiving end of these truths when you're wah-wah-wahing, as I so often do. Truth 4, this is the fun bit, right? A rigorous moral and ethical auditing of your entire life. Right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, right everything. This is the part, as you can imagine, where most human beings, including yours truly, kind of check out. But those first 3 truths, solid gold. Add the neuroscience, and it all lines up incredibly well because, as we've said, the brain registers disappointment as a prediction error. It's as simple and annoying as that, a prediction error. Like, thinking some sensible, rational, well-meaning human being might get elected as the leader of your country, for example. And when does that ever happen nowadays? A prediction error, right? Very, 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 very disappointing for all concerned, unless you voted for the genocide apologist set, Trump, Netanyahu, Modi, Putin. So of course the expected reward doesn't arrive, never arrives. Dopamine dips, systems flare into low-level alert, danger, danger, suffering, fetching, stress response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, wah, blah, 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 blah. But by noticing this, by marking it kinesthetically, audibly, tactically, we complete the circuit, if you like. For you God botherers out there, imagine your man has just witnessed your pathetic and pathetic moment of microhuman misery and reaches out, as purported by those who pay their church, synagogue, mosque tithes, reaches out and down from the clouds so as to gently and sympathetically stroke your God-forsaken cheek. And we know it's all just cogs and meat up there, right? We know this. But that's the feeling sometimes I get when I click the clicker. And the feeling, the vibe, for some of us anyway, is kind of important. So how does this happen? Okay, anterior cingulate cortex, the bit that lines up when something feels off, wrong, unresolved, or weirdly resolved, logs the blip, the flip, the click, and in that micro moment we get a tiny but measurable sense of relief from the grind of being this evolutionarily and culturally straitjacketed monkey trying to make sense of our conscious existence through nothing but symbolic language and a Wi-Fi connection. And thus, maybe, just maybe, in the space between our clicks, between disappointments, we also start to notice the opposite of disappointment, which of course is flow, aka being, presence, with no self in the equation to fuck things up. And that, my friends, is part of the earnest game of getting through life, which is, I would say, largely about getting over disappointment. I suspect you were, I don't know, expecting more from this video than me and this, but hey, that's okay, because other than feeling irked that the YouTube recommendation algorithm sent you me rather than another video from insert favorite YouTube channel, it's all fine, really. You're not sad. You're just disappointed. I'm not sad. I'm just disappointed. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. And you're not lost. You're just misdirected.